Hello.
That was Pete and a famous British bird photographer on a very bleak and windy beach trying to make a film. You can find out what they were photographing and where they were a little later on in the programme.
Yeah, but first, a bit of aviation history was made last Thursday, with the startling news that a flying saucer had been sighted in Bedfordshire. Pressmen, news cameras turned out in force as this incredible flying machine took to the air. It's the Skyship, a prototype of a revolutionary new British plane. It's a 9 metres wide, disc-shaped nylon balloon filled with helium gas and driven by 4 battery-powered engines. The test flight was a tremendous success, and it took place at RAF Cardington, inside the huge hangar originally built to house another great airship, the R101. And that seemed absolutely right, because it's a direct descendant from those great airships that filled the skies way back in the 1920s and 30s.
Well, this airship wasn't actually doing its flight test at Cardington, but in a large barn, the home of the pilot, and an expert pilot he is too, Richard Barnes-Gorrell. Now, it was Richard's great-grandfather, Lord Ventry, who was one of the pioneer pilots of airships, that gave Richard the idea for this airship. And in fact, Lord Ventry helped to design it. We're coming down a bit fast. Shall I get round the front and just help it round? And Richard was building it. Is there enough power to lift it up and go around? There we are. Of course, it's got quite a large turning circle normally, and it's a little bit small here in the studio. It does have a rudder that turns it, and it's all radio controlled as well. It's very graceful, that's super. See if you can go over that shelf unit. We have a little bit of cotton hanging down, because we had a near disaster this afternoon, because it started going up like this, and it's going up again, isn't it, Richard?
Yeah.
In fact, the helium inside there expands with the heat of the studio, and there's really not enough power in the propeller. Oh, it's coming down now. Once it gets away... Mind the tail!
Sorry.
Oh, we had trouble with the R101 once, didn't we? Did the same sort of thing. Hang on, I'll guide it home, shall I?
All right, I'll bring her down.
Give it a bit of right rudder. And down on the props. Isn't that graceful? Isn't that super? Watch out, Jason.
Just mind, Jason.
Off you go. Go on. And just
are.
let it gently drift down now. There we are.
Really, it's tremendous.
Richard, this is called Bournemouth 3, isn't it?
That's right, yes.
Well, what happened to Bournemouth 1 and 2?
Well, Bournemouth 1 was a full-size ship. She was 45,000 cubic feet.
Yeah.
And Lord Ventry, in fact, was one of the people who piloted her. And Bournemouth 2 was a model rather like this one, but unfortunately was filled with hydrogen and came to a terrible end as it blew up and caught fire.
You learned your lesson and fill this one with helium.
That's right.
How much helium does it take? Quite a bit.
In fact, it's 37.5 cubic feet in here now.
That's quite a lot. Is it based on an actual airship, this?
Yes, this is as near as we can get it, a copy of the Willows No. 4.
Yeah, I'll tell you what, I'll switch these propellers off.
Was this part of it as well, this long girder that runs the whole length along
there? Yes, the long boom. It's very useful, in fact, for distributing the weight of the gondola along the whole surface of the envelope, in fact.
And the gondola would normally carry the pilot and passengers, but in there you can just see some of the electronics. You've got a receiver down here, haven't you?
That's right, yes.
A servo connected to the rudder.
That's
You've
right.
got wires that go along to the rudder. If you move the rudder, I don't know whether you can see it down the other end, can you? Just about. It's a bit difficult. There it is. And then you've got another servo that comes down to the propellers.
That's right, and they can swivel from there right up to there.
Is that something that happens on a full-size airship as well? Do they move?
Well, on some it does. The problem, of course, is actually rotating an engine. It's very hard, and they usually use a swivelling mechanism just for the propellers only.
And what about the development of this?
Well, on this little model, we've got a larger envelope that should take 43.5 cubic feet.
Swivel the engines.
OK.
Let's take it off for a final flight there. Thanks very much, Richard, for bringing it along to the studio. It's a splendid model, and it really does fly remarkably well.
That's super.
That's great. Well, you see, a couple of years' hard work flying off there. I'm sure you'd agree with us. It was well worth the effort. Smashing airship there.
Now, if you like watching wildlife films, you've probably wondered what goes on behind the scenes whilst they're being made. I discovered for myself the other day when a top photographer invited me to join him on a day's filming. The place was a desolate piece of shoreline near Portsmouth, and the photographer was naturalist and cameraman John Keeling. Oh, it really is bleak here, John.
It's even bleaker on the island.
We'd picked a bitter day for filming, but this is one of the things the naturalist has to put up with. John knows the spots where he'll find the birds he wants to film. In this case, a shingle island, separated from the shore by some shallow water. John had arranged a boat to take him, me and his equipment the short way out to the island. The birds gather round here in their thousands to feed, eating crabs, worms and seaweed.
Oh, where are we heading to, John?
Well, there's the island over there, Baker's Island.
Uh-huh. It's a bit sort of out of the way, isn't it?
Well, yes, it is, but that, that's really what I need, because if there are people around, the birds aren't going to, be around, so they get frightened off.
Yes.
And wading birds, which is what I'm trying to get, are very shy.
Do they ever come on the land? I mean...
Yes, they do. They do come down here. But really, it's in an area like this, it's finding the spot where they come regularly. And that's really what I'm looking for.
Yeah.
The tide has been up for about an hour now. And when it goes down, the feeding area will be exposed.
Yes.
And, of course, they haven't been able to feed for about 2 hours because the tide's up. Yes, I think there are a few birds on the end there, on the end of that spit. I expect
the binoculars up and have a look.
I expect they'll fly up when we get a bit closer.
Oh, yes, I can see. There's some black ones.
Yes, there's some oyster catchers out there.
What are they called?
Oyster catchers.
John was right. The oyster catchers did take off as we approached, but he said that they and many other birds would be back before long. All his filming has to be done from a hide. This disguises the human outline and the birds quickly get used to it. There's only room for one in a hide, so I had to bring my own. When we beached the boat, the first thing to be done was to offload the camera gear, hides and equipment before making off to find a suitable place to get everything ready for filming.
Do you want the ground shoes?
No, we'll leave that here.
Okay. Which way?
I think down to the end of the spit there. Well, I think this is as good a spot as any. I've been out here before. In fact, this is one of the favourite places.
John wanted to get the hides up before the tide went out too far, so we set to work straight away. The hides are made from short pole sections and camouflaged canvas and held up with guys and pegs like a tent. Normally they're not difficult to set up, but the wind had started gusting, which made it more tricky, especially when it came to getting the canvas in position.
Should be some holes in the top.
Is that it?
That's
that
it.
One there?
Yep.
We spent 20 minutes or so putting up the hides, John adding the finishing touch to his by filling pockets in the walls with stones to stop the canvas flapping.
All secure?
Yes, I think that should hold them down.
Good.
Before getting into the hides, he gave me a quick rundown of the equipment.
Start with a tripod. Need a tripod to keep the camera steady. And
Are you going to put the camera on out here?
yes, and then I'll ease it through into the hide. Right.
What's the special lens, John?
That's a special, very long focus lens.
Uh-huh.
Because the birds are going to be some distance from us.
Yes. A couple of seats. Which one are you going?
I'll go on this one.
Okay.
Now the haversack. Torch I always carry.
What's that for?
Check all the settings on the camera, the exposure
Yeah.
and
Because everything you shoot, it's probably the only chance you'll have, isn't it?
yes, it
You
is.
can't guarantee to get the same thing ever again.
Notebook and 2 pencils for making notes of what I film, and also making notes on the behaviour of birds.
Because you're studying them at the same time.
Oh yes, not just making a film.
Uh-huh.
No, one of the most important things is string and nappy pins.
Oh.
I've got some for you.
I'm
They
sure
are
I'll need them. Would you mind telling me why?
Well, it's, I mean, today especially is a windy day, So if you put one of the nappy pins through, say, the roof of the hide, tie a bit of string onto it and put a stone on the end, it'll...
Stops it from blowing around
Yes.
and all that, yes.
There we are. Some sandwiches for you,
Smashing.
some sandwiches for me, some coffee for you.
Terrific.
I've also got my exposure meter and some spare film.
So, we're all set to start work.
Right.
Can I go in this hide?
Yes, I'll see you. You want a stool?
Thank you.
It was quite a squeeze getting into the tiny hide, and I certainly wasn't looking forward to being there several hours. When I was inside, John passed the folding stool, and I started to settle down.
Get as comfortable as you can.
Right.
There were small windows in the sides, and once in his hide, John put the lens of his camera through one and looked through another. He said he was worried about the weather, which was far from ideal. With the hides flapping in the wind, the birds might not come very close. The tide was now halfway out, and as we waited for what seemed ages, I realised that some birds at least were waiting to feed.
Right over down that distant sandbar, there seem to be a tremendous number of birds. Are they likely to come any closer?
Well, I hope so, yes. That's normally the first sort of sandbar that's exposed when the tide goes out. So they're all feeding madly.
Yes.
And then as more and more of the sandbars are exposed, they'll disperse and they won't be such a solid mass of birds.
Yes.
But let's hope they come towards us.
There's one closer, actually. Just
Yes.
in front of us here. What's
Oh,
that?
yes, I hadn't noticed that. Yes, that's a redshank. It's going through all the seaweed. What it does is it flips over the seaweed to find crabs and things underneath. But it also does eat seaweed and eats seeds and vegetation and things like that. Whereas most of the other waders feed only on crabs and seafood, so to speak.
Yes. You can see really how shallow the water was
Yes.
there, because the mud banks are sort of popping up all over the place,
Yes,
aren't they?
and in fact you can see the tide line down there, and there's a bird there in amongst some black-headed gulls. It's difficult to see.
Binoculars on it.
Yes, it's a bar-tailed godwit.
I'll have to take your word for that.
If you notice it's feeding right up to its tummy there. And in fact it feeds into the water.
I thought it just had short legs and was in very shallow water. It's got long legs and it's in quite deep water.
So in fact it doesn't have to wait for the tide to go out. It can go out with the tide line, so it can feed before the mud banks are exposed.
So it gets first choice of all
Yes,
the
it does.
goodies.
Yes.
Yeah.
Look, there's a flock of dunlin. They've just landed over on my right. Can you see?
Oh, yes, I can. Yes.
Now, they're completely different to the redshank we've just seen, because they're pushing their beaks right in up to the hill.
Yes. Yeah.
They're feeding
One
on...
whipping around there. They
Yeah.
don't half move.
Yes, they
Very
do.
fast.
Yes, they're the most common wading bird there is. If you look over on your left, very close to the hide, there are a couple of black and white birds. Can you see them?
Yes.
They're not feeding, they're sort of running together. Those are ring plovers. There aren't many of them here, and they tend to be very shy. We're lucky to see those.
Yes. Well, before you start any serious work there, John, do you want some of this coffee?
Yes, please, Peter.
No, I'll pass it through this side.
Right, thanks.
I tucked into my sandwiches, and John got straight down to his filming. He was pleased I'd seen something in spite of the weather. The birds were common enough, but they're all very shy, and for John, the discomfort of 5 hours in a hide is well worth it for the thrill of capturing them on film.
Very interesting, that, especially the coffee bit. Well, the next time I see a natural history picture, I shall think of the photographer and all the trouble he's got to go to get his pictures. But now there's stop-press news of some giant-sized furry animals, the wombles. And today they're with us in the studio. I've never seen them looking so smart. Uncle Bulgaria's turned up with their latest record.
Hello, Uncle Bulgaria. You've got the record there. Now, if you'd like to put it on the turntable, if we can find the hole, that is. There it was. There it was. And wind it up. And I'm rather looking forward to this, because this is the first time ever that this song has been heard on television. It's Wombling White Tie and Tails.
I've always had a thing about Fred Astaire, tapping like a telegraph and dancing on air. They told me all you needed was a little bit of syncopation. So let my for my age. I may be fat, but I'm gonna be big someday. Now give me a star on my dressing room door. A tapping technique will be hard to ignore. Dance to the rhythm. Dance to the rhythm. And sing, sing, sing like a womble. Dance, dance, dance like a womble. You're an entertainer from the head down to your wobbling white time tail. So sing, sing, sing like a womble. Dance, dance, dance like a womble. You're an entertainer from the head down to your wobbling white time tail. Whoa, whoa, whoa. The Hollywood train's on time. When you hear that whistle blowing,
Womble up and see me sometime.
sing, sing, sing like a womble. Dance, dance, dance like a womble. You're an entertainer from the head down in your wobbling white time tail. So sing, sing, sing like a womble. Dance, dance, dance like a womble. You're an entertainer from the head down to your wobbling white time tail.
I never thought I'd see the day when I saw a wombling tap dance. Very nice, though. Well, as you probably know, this coming Wednesday, April the 23rd, is St. George's Day. It's a very special day for England when we celebrate our patron saint. And from most public buildings and churches, you'll probably be able to see this flag flying in his honour. It's got the St. George's cross on it. It's a red cross on a white background. But something that not very many people know about St. George is the fact that this perfect Christian knight wasn't an Englishman at all. In fact, he probably never even trod English soil. The story goes that, centuries and centuries ago, the English Crusaders were at war in the Mediterranean, and they heard stories and tales about this St. George. Well, they liked so much what they heard about him that they decided to adopt him as their special saint. But it turns out that England isn't the only country that admired St. George, as Val discovered when she went on her trip to Venice. Because St. George is the patron saint of Venice too. Well, she saw this picture of him in gleaming black armour, fighting off the dragon so fiercely that he's broken his lance. And Val thought this picture was so striking that she wanted to find out more about the artist and why he'd painted it. Well, all the answers to that are here in this book. The artist's name was Vittore Carpaccio, and around 400 years ago, he was one of the most popular artists in Venice, where he used to paint very detailed pictures of life in the city, like this canal-side scene. The very rich and important people who used to buy his paintings were Venetians like the artist, so he had to go to a great deal of trouble to make sure that he got the details absolutely right, otherwise they'd have known because they lived there. It's rather like being a press photographer reporting exactly what was happening in the city. Like, here we are, this busy quayside scene where the porters pushed their way through the crowds and gondolas and ferry boats that jammed up the waterways beneath the ancient bridges, just as they do today. Well, one day, some very rich merchants of Venice formed a society to help poor people. Now, they built themselves a chapel, and they wanted to have it decorated with pictures of their favourite saints. They particularly wanted St. George, and they commissioned Carpaccio as their special artist. Well, there were two reasons why they decided on him. The first one was that he was a superb artist at painting armour, and you can tell that by this splendid picture here. There's a young man, complete in his shining armour, standing outside a castle, and there's another knight in a different sort of armour going off to battle. Well, the second reason that they chose him was that he always packed all his pictures full of animals. In this one I've just shown you, you see there's masses of birds in flight, there's all sorts of animals, too numerous to mention, and there's even a ferret and a frog. They really were superbly painted, so they obviously picked the right man for the job. Well, in order to fit the chapel, the painting that the merchants ordered had to be very long and thin. Carpaccio painted them a long, thin painting. It went right the way round the chapel, rather like a strip cartoon. And in the book here is the main picture. Well, this one tells the important bit of the story, where St. George actually kills the dragon. And there is the dragon in its death throes, surrounded by very grisly, half-eaten bits of his victims. St. George is on a splendid charger, but something I find interesting is the fact that here his armour is comparatively plain, very plain, compared with the pictures you see of him in England, where he's always dressed up like a crusader, wearing the red cross of St. George. Well, behind him, up here, is the poor princess that he's rescued from the dreadful fate. In the next picture, Carpaccio painted St. George dragging the dead dragon back to show the princess's father. Incidentally, the princess's father was so grateful that the legend has it that he offered St. George the princess's hand in marriage. But St. George refused. "I am a knight of God," he replied. "I must ride on to rescue other helpless victims of wicked tyrants like the dragon." Well, the king and his daughter were so impressed that they asked St. George to baptise them as Christians too. This he did whilst the whole city looked on. Well, something that Val found when she saw the paintings in Venice was that even though they're very, very old, they still look as fresh and as new as the day that they were painted, which is really rather nice. And I'm sure that at the chapel in Venice, as in the public buildings and the churches here in England, on Wednesday, St. George's flag will be flying high. Now, have a look at a face that you haven't seen for about 6 months. It's Frida.
Yes, because Frida's been away in hibernation there. But as you can see, she's up and about and raring to run around. But before she can start to run about in the garden, she's really got to have a sort of hibernation or post-hibernation wash and brush up. And for this, she's heading straight towards the bowl. Keep going, Frida. That's a good girl. And you're here. A little bit of tepid water in a bowl or a saucer. A little bit of cotton wool, too. And what I'm going to do, first of all, is just rub it very gently over her eye, because 4 or 5, 6 months in hibernation could get a little bit of sleepy, a little bit of sleep in the eye, and you just want to get rid of that. Not using the same piece of cotton wool, but another one. Do the other eye, then. There we are. Hang on. All right. Actually, they don't look too bad, their eyes. But sometimes you find quite a lot of sleep in there. When you've done that, top of her head probably needs a bit of dusting. And then with another piece of cotton wool, you can then work over a shell. It's obviously got a little bit dusty in the box, because she had straw and all sorts of things in there. If you put leaves in as well, the tortoise will get a little bit dirty. You may find that up the north of the country, your tortoise really isn't ready to come out of hibernation yet, because it's just a few degrees colder up north. And it's surprising how much difference it makes. I'll tell you what, Frida, I'll give you a real treat. I'll tickle your tummy as well. There we are. Look, you can see her. She's laughing. You'll love that, don't you? Well, to dry her off, you could either let her run around the house or get a nice clean towel and just wipe her down. And there you are. All right, Frida? You'll notice, actually, look at that name. It's looking very grotty. In fact, sort of chipped and worn from running around the garden last season. So what we're going to do now is give her a little bit of paintwork brush up there. I've got some non-lead paint. In fact, this is an emulsion paint, which I find works quite well. And just touch up the bits that I've got chipped, like down there. Don't move, Frida, or it might go all blurry. There you are. You'll also find, as it's been quite a mild winter, that they didn't go into hibernation quite so fast. And because of this, the tortoise uses up quite a lot of sort of energy that it's really stored for hibernation. So when they come out of hibernation, they're very hungry. And I was tempting Frida with a little bit of cucumber earlier, and she really sunk her teeth into it. So as soon as I've got round to the the last letter. Where are we on? F. Oh, that's an R, isn't it? There we are. Nearly didn't spell it right. F-R-E-D. Oh, that's a D, is it? Yeah, you can see. Very useful, actually, putting this non-lead paint on in the name of a name, because they can get sort of mixed up with leaves, all bits of rubbish in the garden, and they have been known to end up on bonfires, which is rather unpleasant. And of course, if you lose them, it's quite easy to see your daughters. There you are. Right, we'll see how you're doing on the nosh steaks. I haven't got one of my pizzas for you, but how about a nice little bit of cucumber? Sink your choppers into that. Give it a smell first. Oh, look at it. Hey, look at that. Yeah, well, I did say she was hungry, didn't I?
You didn't expect that, though, did you?
No.
We'll be back on Thursday, and we'll be able to give you all the news about what happens tomorrow at our 3Bs auction.
Oh, we'll see you then.
Yes.
Bye-bye.
See you on Thursday. Bye-bye.
Mind your fingers.